I don't know if I could do tile in my house, like in the bedrooms and everything. Like, it just seems so, I don't know why it seems colder than hardwood. Maybe around behind you and then clip onto there. Have you done much yoga? You didn't look like you were struggling as much as the rest of us.
I have done, a little bit of yoga.
I felt like such an LA yuppie last night, but then it's like, I can see why people do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can see
Especially
the
that
appeal.
place, like with the supermodels walking around.
Right?
All right, so we're here with Tanner from Masculine Style. If you don't know him, subscribe to his YouTube channel, and then you can go to masculine-style.com. And Tanner focuses a lot on the why behind dressing well and the philosophy of appearance and personal image. He's also got a background in custom menswear, so he really understands the details of fit, especially when it comes to fitting specific body types. So Tanner, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I think we're going to have a good conversation.
You are, so you're a taller guy, right? How tall are you?
6 feet.
Okay, so you're 6 feet tall. You got a beard, you got a deep voice, so you're a kind of like a masculine guy.
Well, I appreciate that.
Handsome, obviously. You do boxing, like you have a family, so you're kind of like you have a lot of reasons to feel like a man. Some people don't have that. So some people maybe look young or can't grow a beard, or maybe they're short, or they're like thin, or like they don't have big muscles, or they just don't have a lot of natural reasons to feel manly and feel masculine. So how can you use your appearance, or the things that you can control about your appearance, like your clothing, to feel more like a man, even if you don't necessarily look like one?
Awesome. I love this question. I have tied this into, because I've thought about this even from my own perspective, because there are plenty of times where I'm just like, there are dudes who are way more masculine than I am. And I think it's something that as men, we're always a little bit concerned with. You just want to make sure that you're not that it's bad to be effeminate, but that's just not what we are, nor is it bad to be childlike, but we don't want to be childlike either. Like, you want to be a well-established, self-respecting, and respectable man.
Right.
And so there's definitely certain ways that clothing or our body language or our posture, all these other things that they can be tied into it. One of the ways that I found has really opened up my eyes for me is I read a book called The Way of Men by Jack Donovan. I don't know if you've heard of him or read his stuff.
I haven't read it, but yeah, I've heard of it.
He does a really good job of breaking down the kind of amoral, he calls them the tactical virtues of masculinity. Because I think a lot of times if you ask somebody what it means to be a good man, then they'll give you definitions that may be moral, but they don't necessarily separate men from women or men from children. Like, they're things that just apply to women as much as they do to men, or with kids or anything else. And so he breaks them down into strength, courage, mastery, and honor or loyalty.
Okay.
And so men, as you study history or as you look at different tribes of men at different points in time or in different cultures, those are things that we've always signaled with our clothing. Always. Whether it's Native Americans who would wear particular feathers, and based on the way that they were cut or dyed, they were symbols of, acts of bravery in war. Or little things like the way that your hair is done can communicate a level of discipline because you've got the part, but also a little bit of effortlessness because there's certain mastery that comes with effortlessness. And so it's two different ways of approaching mastery by having discipline and effortlessness in there. And these are all very subconscious things that are communicated.
Yeah.
But if men can get deliberate about communicating those things, then they can start to communicate more and tell more of a story of masculinity. And so it may not be that strength is your strong point. No pun intended, I guess, right? It may not be that you're the biggest, buffest dude. I'm certainly not, or the tallest guy or anything else. But if you can communicate things like honor or mastery or courage or other things through your clothing, then it can certainly compensate where you're deficient in other areas.
Yeah. So are there certain ways, like universal ways, to communicate those things with your clothing, or is it totally dependent on like what tribe you're in and your lifestyle and
I think it's totally dependent.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at certain objective things, like the reason suits have been around for so long, especially in Western civilization, is because the shoulders and the way that the lapels sit and everything else, it creates this really strong V taper. And historically and biologically, bigger, stronger men have broader shoulders and smaller waists. And so it's a subconscious signaling of strong man, and that's attractive. Whether that's attractive from a sexual perspective for women or attractive from a I want to follow this kind of guy as a leader perspective from other men or anything else.
So speaking of like the effortless kind of vibe, like, you know, like there's certain people, you look at their outfit and it doesn't matter if it's a suit or something else, you look at their outfit and you're like, that person just seems like they didn't struggle putting that together this morning. Like it seems like they get dressed in the dark and they would still look good, you know? So what are some things like for example, I know that in a lot of your Instagram posts, like when you are suited up, you do this thing with your tie where the skinny end of the tie is a little longer than the fat end of the tie. What's that all about?
So for me, that literally happens because I like a 4-in-hand knot. I like a skinnier, more narrow knot, and I like to wear my stuff higher waisted. And as a result, my ties end up, they're too long for me compared to what they were when I was doing bigger knots and lower waistlines.
Too long for him, by the way.
Yeah.
Tie maker. Please hear me. Too long for him. He's 6 feet tall.
Right? And so I just tie it up, and wherever it falls, it falls. But part of it too is that it ends up looking worse if the long blade falls way too far below your waistband than it does if the long blade falls where it should and the skinny blade is longer.
Right.
And then part of it too is within that sartorial menswear tribe, that's a signal of effortlessness.
Right.
And so it's a way for me to be able to say, hey, I'm part of the club, or the other guys that I look up to, they like to wear their ties that way.
Yeah.
And so all of that kind of coalesces together into a look that for guys who are on the outside looking in, I get comments every single day on Instagram or YouTube. It's like, did you know? It's like, yeah, I know. That's on purpose.
Yeah.
But even then, there are days when it doesn't happen, and I'm not losing any sleep over it either. It doesn't always have to be that the skinny blade is longer, because then the effortlessness of it is lost.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the whole point, isn't it? That like if you're running a little late or whatever, and you're tying your tie, suit's perfectly tailored, shirt's ironed the night before. You're tying your tie, skinny end ends up a little longer. You're like, that's all good.
Okay, we're good.
Go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And some days, if it's way too long, I'll tuck it into the waistband of my pants.
Yeah.
And some days it's just right, and that's great too. And it's just clothes.
Yeah. And it doesn't bother you because it's how to tie a tie.
Exactly.
You could do it again and it'd be perfect, but you're just like, I'm not trying to prove anything to myself here. I gotta go. Okay, so since you do have a few years under your belt, measuring guys for custom suits, were there anything that maybe a shorter guy thought about his suit or how he wanted his suit to be that you knew wasn't best for his build?
Yeah, my experience, especially over the last few years, has been that, especially with trends being the way that they are, shorter guys want to go hyper skinny. And I completely agree that everything you wear should fit, and it should fit intentionally. And there are objective measures of what good fit is, but good fit doesn't automatically equal skinny, or definitely not super skinny.
And obviously, the definition of slim or skinny is going to vary depending on person.
It's such an ethereal term.
Yeah. Okay. So if someone came in and they said, I like a skinny leg on my suit, you would hear that and then say, okay, this person's definition of skinny might be completely different than my version or than that guy's.
Right.
And so you would kind of try to do what objectively is going to look good on them for as long as possible.
Yeah. Well, and that's why if you go to the right kind of place to have suits made, whether it's a really robust made-to-measure location where I worked, where we would use fit samples. And so you're actually putting clothing on your client, and then it's not just, well, what does skinny mean to you? And I'm going to take a measurement, and then we would actually put something on and pin it up, and then we would have a conversation about how that looked. Bespoke takes that even another, 2 or 3 steps further, so that it takes that subjective, difficult conversation and makes it much more objective.
And I noticed that you've been experimenting recently with fuller cuts and higher rises. So what are you just experimenting, or what's behind that? Yeah,
a big part of it is that it's just experimentation. A big part of it too is there are guys who I follow on Instagram or guys with whom I'm friends, and I'm scrolling through my feed and I see this come up and that looks awesome. Like, it looks so good to me. And I've been in this game long enough that I know that you can't objectively say that something is timeless or something is, there's no such thing as this perfect timeless style.
Right.
Everything's a trend.
Yeah.
Everything, because even take the suit, which has been in its iteration for since the 19 teens.
Yeah.
If you were to wear one from the 60s versus today, the gorge on the lapel is going to be a little bit different, or the way that the breast pocket is shaped, or how high up the vents come on the back, or all these little things, and it will look out of place today.
Right.
And so even with something as standard as a suit, but then you go back 500 years and you wear something like this 500 years ago, totally inappropriate. Go back another 1,500 years, totally inappropriate. So there's no such thing as timeless style.
Yeah, I love that point about this myth of timelessness, because it's something that's thrown around so much.
And so nonchalantly.
So nonchalantly. And I think I can understand it, and I'm guilty of it, but I think as guys, like, we're, for the most part, like, kind of like functional, and like we just, for most guys, clothing is like, we want that timeless wardrobe because we kind of want to build a wardrobe and be done with it.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Right.
Like guys who are more involved in style or fashion might want to keep playing with trends and stuff like that. But so I can see the appeal of a timeless wardrobe, but you're right, like, using the last 100 years is such a tiny scale, and if you zoom out just a little bit, there's no such thing as timeless clothing.
Not at all. I think a lot of times when we say timeless, we mean neutral.
Huh, okay.
Like, it's not super polarizing. It's not like on this really quick cycle of change. It's not something that anybody's going to look at and go, that's totally on trend this year, or anything like that. But at the same time, you should not dress the same when you're 40 as you do when you're 20.
Yeah.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and you can always tell when you see somebody who actually, like, I was writing a post about style for older men, and I was using like celebrities as examples, and I found some pictures of Robert Downey Jr. And he's a guy, like, I have a lot of respect for him as an actor, but I was looking at his style, and he always wears sneakers with suits, and like these ridiculous sunglasses, and it's like he's trying to communicate to the world one thing, but he's actually communicating the exact opposite. So he's trying to say, like, I'm still cool, which he doesn't need to wear sneakers. So, like, we know that.
No, we know that. That's already there.
And when he wears the sneakers, it looks like an old man trying to look young.
Yes. But at the same time, you don't, if you've got a guy I get a lot of questions from guys who are 16, 17 years old, and they're like, I'm in high school, I'm in my first year of college, and I just want to wear suits all the time, but people treat me differently. It's like, well, of course they do. Because you're trying to signal age and establishment and respect and all these other things that you haven't earned yet.
Yeah.
You haven't earned them yet.
Yeah.
And so there are ways to wear something like this that can still communicate mastery and discipline and honor, but it still looks very much appropriate to an age group. And then as you get older and you accomplish more, then you can earn all these other things that come with it. And then why would you get rid of what you've earned when you're older?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So I want to switch gears just a tiny bit. So kind of like how we started our conversation, you have your brand is all around masculinity and masculine style. A lot of my readers and followers struggle with insecurity around height.
Okay.
And for some shorter guys, it's like they don't even realize they're short. It's not a problem. It's never been a problem, socially, romantically, professionally, whatever. But for a lot of shorter guys, it is a problem. And I think it's kind of a spectrum of, some guys don't even know they're short, and some guys it's like crippling insecurity. And most people are somewhere in the middle, you know. For me, the older I get, the more toward that side of the spectrum I move. The less I care about my height or what anybody thinks about really anything about me, And I think that's something that comes with age for everybody.
Why?
I'm not sure, but like I just think about how I felt about other people's opinions in high school versus now. I'm 32. And it's just vastly different, and I don't really know why.
Isn't it because you've earned your place in the world?
Yeah.
I mean, you know who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
You've accomplished great things. You've attained success. You've been able to do things. You've got a great relationship. Like all these things that when you're younger, whether it's because of your height or anything else, is this crippling insecurity.
Yeah.
It's because you haven't done enough with it yet.
That's
right?
Actually, that's a great point. Yeah, you haven't really given yourself any reasons to feel confident, Because like confidence, I don't know where I heard this definition, but confidence is like the ability to trust yourself to get something done. So
I like that.
Trusting in yourself.
I like
right?
that.
And if you don't have any reason to trust in yourself, how can you feel confident?
Yeah.
So, people say be confident.
You have to earn that. You have to earn that.
Yeah. You have to give yourself a reason. Yeah. And so you're right. I think if you're, if you're someone who's trying to improve themselves, the older you get, the more notches in your belt you should have, the more, reasons you should have to feel confident. But for you, and maybe not now, but at any time in your life, did you have anything that you were like insecure about, or that kind of brought you down and made you question your own value or masculinity?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that's why style is something that's always been so interesting to me. So when I was in fourth grade, my parents pulled me and my siblings from a regular public elementary school, and they put us into a private school. And it was one where there was a uniform, there was gray slacks and a navy blazer and a white button-up shirt. And I still had all my same friends. And I remember 7th and 8th grade were particularly difficult years for me because all of my friends at home got to wear whatever they wanted. And I was a BMX and a punk rock kid.
Yeah.
And so it was the complete,
was a BMX
right?
punk rock kid.
So it was the complete opposite. Like, not only was it just like, oh, you're wearing a uniform, but that's like, the idea of wearing nice clothing was completely counter to how I viewed my relationship with the world. It was selling out. It was not being good at being a punk rocker. It was all this stuff. And then my friends exacerbated that because they teased me for it. You know what I mean? Granted, now you understand that like that's just part of having friends and figuring out the pecking order of things when you're in junior high school and that awkward time.
Your tribe were teasing you about your style that you had to conform to with this new school.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I couldn't get out of it. I tried for years to let my parents send me to a different school. Yeah. I was bad enough that they suspended me and I almost got expelled. And so much of it came back to the way that clothing signaled things with my friends when I was at home. And ultimately, it's the same thing now, which is so funny to think about it because I'm still friends with a lot of these guys, and sometimes they do still razz me about my clothes, but it doesn't matter anymore because you've got enough experience under your belt, you've got enough notches. I love the way that you've put that. You've done enough with your life that they can either take you on your terms or you can find somebody else who has.
Right.
And whether it's your height or the way that you dress or the amount of money you have or don't have, or you can't get a girlfriend or anything else, there's a big difference between being frustrated with it as a problem or using that as an excuse to not try and do things that are difficult or scary. Because if you do things that are difficult and scary, and then you realize that you can do them and survive them, and then you've earned your confidence, you've earned your place in the world, then whatever that problem is irrelevant because you've got so many other good things going for you that it totally outweighs that.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why dressing well can be so important. Because, I mean, if you look at it as you've got two piles, you've got a pile of things that are working, or a scale is even better. You've got your scale here and you've got things that are negative and things that are positive. Why in the world would you not put your clothing in the positive pile?
Yeah.
Why not? Because either way, it's going to be somewhere on this scale.
Yeah.
And so many men are just like, well, style, it's stupid. I'm going to keep it over here. It's like, no, why? Put it on this side of the scale.
Like under the guise of, I don't care.
Exactly. Thinking that it's over here because you don't care, but it's not. It's there, and put it here.
Yeah. My dad always said, and he was an IBMer, and at IBM in the 80s, you wore a white shirt and a black suit to work.
Yep.
That's what you wore, and a solid tie. And you didn't show up late, And he always said, your clothes are either working for you or against you, but they're always working. And I think that's just so true.
Yep.
That's a great place to wrap up. If you don't know Tanner and you want to, get to know him and his channel, I think a good place to start is with your archetypes quiz. He kind of helps you figure out what type of style personality you have, and then that helps you make decisions about, getting dressed and buying clothes and everything else. So great place to start. Link to all that below. And thank you, sir.
Dude, Brock, thank you. So much fun.